hit this point where you have built so much, you've done so much, you've accomplished so much, and you're like, what is going on? Why am I so tired all the time? What is happening with these relationships that I worked so hard for? If you're building a life where there is no margin, you cannot have depth and richness in your relationship, in your marriage. It's impossible. You can create a life and a business where there is high profitability, high margin, there's spaciousness for yourself, there's more than enough room for you to have the energy, to have the relationships, to have the health. Everything God wants to multiply in your life, from wisdom to discernment to intimacy to connection to beauty to profitability to health and vitality, requires space. It requires margin. Yet, so many of us are living lives where we just eat up the margin in which God's work unfolds in our lives. Listen up. Today, we're going to be talking about the difference between a high margin life, a life that operates from overflow. What does that look like? I'm going to talk about 7 key areas, as well as a low margin existence. Because here's the truth. You can be sitting in the most extravagant house. You can have all the luxuries your heart could long for, right? You could be making a ton of money, have your investments locked in, be taking luxurious vacations, and still have no margin. You could be sitting in the middle of a dream, a blessing that God has given you. And as I've talked about often on the show, not being able to enjoy it, not being able to relax. So today I want to talk about what is the difference between having and creating a high margin lifestyle and life where God's work can unfold in it versus chasing and creating a low margin life, AKA existence. Okay. Which is, by the way, the world's way of operating. Of course, this podcast is coming on the heels of the last several episodes where I've been talking a lot about the second half of life, making the second half even better than the first. I've been talking a lot about the fact that the programs that got you here, the blueprints, the successful, plans, the ways of the world, which by the way are built on empire systems, are not the ways that are going to lead you into a life of true peace, true prosperity, to prosper in your soul, your spirit, your mind, your body, and to experience the peace and the fullness that God has for us. So obviously I'm at this inflection point in my life. I've been doing this work for a while. And recently I came back from several weeks in Greece, which I absolutely love. You guys catch the last episode where I talked a lot about it's halftime, baby, right? Do you take time to break in the middle of the game and say, hold on a second, do I still want to be playing this game? I talked about that. And I'm realizing that more and more people are reaching out because they've hit this inflection point. You've hit this point where you have built so much, you've done so much, you've accomplished so much, and you're like, what is going on? Why am I so tired all the time? What is happening with these relationships that I worked so hard for? I poured decades into providing for the kids, giving them everything they could want, giving my wife, my family, everything they could want. And I'm having a lot of you reaching out with like really tough questions right now. Like some of you going through separation, some of you going through divorces, only to wake up and realize all of this work is for what? What have we been chasing? So the beautiful thing is at any point, at any moment, you don't have to wait for a breakdown to have a breakthrough. You can break it down, right? Clarity opens our eyes when we're exposed to new ideas, new perspectives, new places, new experiences. It opens our eyes. It gives us insight. It gives us revelation, gives us wisdom, gives us clarity. The question, though, is what will you do with the revelation? Will it just be inspiration that's fleeting and exciting for a minute, but then you go right back to the low margin way of living? Or will today's episode speak into you, stir something inside you, and convict you to take action, to make some powerful decisions for yourself? I hope that that's what's going to happen. I pray that's what happens. So let's jump in. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to dive right in. I want to talk about a high margin life versus a low margin existence, because one of the things that I've been saying yes to more fiercely, I've been protecting, I've been exploring, I've been rediscovering is, Lord, somewhere along the line, I don't know how, I don't know when, it's subtle. I think it happens to all of us who have identified in the past as high performers, high achievers, is that we end up buying this story somehow that we don't deserve to rest until we've done enough. We don't deserve to experience true beauty. We can't experience true beauty, true goodness in our life unless we've like slaved for it, right? Everything has to be earned through some kind of really horrible suffering, really, really hard work. And so unless we experience all of this suck in the process, I'm just going to be honest, then we don't ever give ourselves permission to have margin. And while I do believe there is a thing as holy suffering, right? Like consider it all joy, the trials of many kinds. Some of us are addicted to suffering. Some of us have not given ourselves permission to experience the fullness of God and given God space and room to work in our life and do the things that only He can do. So today I'm talking about stewardship. Okay. I'm talking about stewardship because a low margin life isn't the result of having too little or working in the wrong ways. It's a result of carrying too much that's not yours to carry, and including carrying a lot of default programs, mental operating systems that quite honestly are broken and incongruent to the operating system and Christ-like thinking of the kingdom. So today I want to say this: God never intended us to live at maximum capacity. I talk a lot about it's capacity building season. The Lord is building my capacity, my strength, my skill sets for this new thing that's coming in. We teach capacity building, but we are not created to operate and live at maximum capacity with the pedal down all the time, burning, the RPMs all the way, like in cortisol overload. We are not designed to work in that space in the pressure cooker 24/7 where the lid's just about to just pop off. Because when we operate in that place, there's no room, right? There's no space. Margin creates space for us to hear God's word, to hear God's whisper, to hear God's guidance. It gives us space to actually love people, enjoy people. It gives us space to create and innovate. So many of us have lost the love for our businesses, for the things we enjoy. We haven't done a hobby in so long. We don't know what lights us up. We've lost that desire, that creativity to innovate, which is the spark of God in us. We are created in God's image. So margin creates space for healing. Okay, you guys, when we're in the pressure cooker and we're going 24/7 and we're at max capacity, you're getting up at 5, you're working till 11 at night, you're back to back meetings. We're going to be talking about what it looks like in different areas. That your body can't heal in those conditions. The body is designed to heal during rest, during restoration. That's why rest is woven into the rhythms and timings and cycles of how God works. We're going to be talking about the Sabbath, like to when we work and we operate from a rested state, whether it's resting our body, resting our minds, resting the land, resting the team, right? Resting the high performance car. We give everything time to recalibrate, to heal. The body is designed to heal itself, and margin creates space for that. In fact, I'm not even kidding you guys. I was away for 2.5 weeks and I had this lump on my arm and it was hard. It was like a bone spur or something. And I could not figure out what was going on. And after 2.5 weeks, and I'd been working this thing, I tried to massage it. I was like, is this a piece of bone that's growing out? It was really bothering me. And after 2.5 weeks of total rest, it was completely gone. So the body needs time to recover, okay? Margin creates space, like I said, hearing God, loving people more, getting a chance to connect more deeply, to fall back into creating, to enjoy our life, to actually laugh and sing instead of feel like we're missing out. We should be somewhere else. It allows us a space to be generous and to operate from wisdom. But without margin, everything is about survival. So I want to talk about what is low margin living. Well, low margin living is exactly this. It's when everything is operating near or at max capacity. It's like, I just don't have, I would love to, but I don't have time. I would love to, but I don't have the resources. I would love to, but I have nothing left to give emotionally, physically, spiritually. I'm at max capacity. Every dollar has somewhere to go. It's used up. Every hour on your calendar is already taken. It's already occupied. Every relationship feels like it's trying to get crammed into a box. Like, okay, I got 10 minutes to be with my kids. I got an hour for this person. We're back to back to back. And I'm just going to say, like, this is one of the things that drives me crazy when I'm working with someone online, when they're back to back and they literally are trying to jump from one call to the next. Often they're going overtime because they were late for the previous call. They're running late, they're frazzled. You can tell they're not fully present, and they're bringing whatever they were doing into this call, and whatever we're doing here is going right into the next call. Half the time on the front end and the back end, they're distracted because they're like thinking about what they were just doing or thinking about what they have to do next. So it literally robs us of the presence, it robs us of the connection, it robs us of effectiveness. And this is one of the things, like, it is a pet peeve of mine. And this is why I have strategically, I really don't do back to back calls. It is very rare if I do two back to back calls. I always have a buffer. So there's room to breathe, to transition, and to show up fully present for the next person. So low margin living, every relationship feels rushed. Every dollar is like flying out the window. Every hour is taken. Emotionally, you're spent. Physically, you're spent. Conversations get interrupted. Every problem starts to feel like a crisis because you're in survival mode. It's like one fire after another. And everything that comes in, I'm using everything a lot, but like most situations that come up add to the overwhelm. And it's just like, wow, how much more can I take? Right? There's a strong desire to break free from that. You know you need to do something, but you don't know what or how. High margin living, we've talked about it. There's room, there's space in your calendar, there's room to breathe, there's room to think, room to pray, room to actually reflect on something, to step back, to recover, room to create, not because you need to produce something, just because you're exploring, you're playing. There's room to really love each other, to seek to understand. There's room to respond instead of react. So I want to talk about what are some areas that we can audit, right? What are some areas that we can audit? And really, I think the first step to anything is clarity. Is you can't change what you can't see. And secondly, I'm a big believer that contrast provides clarity. And that's why I talk about it so much. Because once we have that contrast and we can see, now you have the power to make a decision about what will you do about it. What are you going to start saying yes to? What are you going to start saying no to? And do you need structure and accountability and support around you to make sure that you start to move in the right direction and don't default into your old patterns? So let's talk about time margin. Low margin, I've already talked about that. You know, how do you know if you are really rich? It's not that you have a certain amount of numbers in your bank account. Time is an asset. Time is wealth. Like, there's an element of saying, okay, we live on eternal time. If you are a believer, you believe in the kingdom, you know that we are already on an eternal timeline. So the fear of death is not going to rule me as much, because I know I have forever with Christ. I have forever in the kingdom. I'll have a job. I'll be doing work. I'll be with Christ. I'll be living, you know. And also, there is a finite amount of time on this earth with our children, with our families, in the context that we have. So when we realize that, it's like, okay, am I stewarding the time that I have? Am I investing it wisely? Am I operating from a kingdom perspective of stewarding time? Or am I just stuck in this earthly, worldly way of running in a rat race against time? So low margin, my calendar's packed. This is like an audit. My calendar's packed. I wake up, the calendar rules me. I don't rule the calendar. I wake up, people are like, what are you doing? Hold on a second. Let me check the calendar. Let me check the calendar. Because things are getting put on your calendar without you knowing. So this is the person who wakes up, has to check their calendar to figure out, what am I doing today? Where am I supposed to be? Who am I supposed to be talking to? It doesn't mean you're not putting things on your calendar, but there is a difference between having your calendar so packed, there's no time, there's no space for you to, be surprised by God, for God to interrupt your plans, for people to connect. You're rushing everywhere. Low time margin, never present, really struggle to be present. You're one place, you feel like you should be somewhere else, right? You're over here, you're like, I'm running out of time. How long is this going to take? Why are we moving so slow? Why is this river taking forever? Like, we're always in this angst around things moving too slow. We're not moving fast enough. We're trying to multitask. You might be listening to this right now and thinking, okay, I'm going to listen to a podcast while I do this and while I do that. And I mean, there was a whole era where they were teaching about multitasking, but there's enough science out now to show us and tell us that it is totally ineffective. We don't retain the things we're listening to. We're not absorbing the information. We're not executing effectively. And so it ends up being a watered down version of everything. And so presence is power, you guys. No Sabbath, low time margin, low margin existence means like most of you, we're working on Saturday or Sunday. We are rushing, trying to fill the day with kids' activities, lawn activities, team activities, work. I got to catch up on the weekend or prepare for the week ahead. And Sabbath is a sacred thing that the Lord has woven into the fabric of rhythms because he knows when you have a day of total rest, there is spaciousness that comes in. You give to the Lord the first fruit of your time, the beginning of the week that is Sunday, and that sets you up to start to think differently, to innovate differently, to problem solve differently. But we have this tension that I can't afford to give God the Sunday, the Sabbath, the first fruit because I don't have enough. I'm in this lack, I'm at max capacity. And so we live in this tension. We shift it by giving the Lord the first fruit, by creating the space and being willing to release. Okay, I'm not going to get it all done. I'm something's got to go, and I'm making room. And here's every time I've done this, I realized that whatever I thought I needed to do, I was able to accomplish with way much more ease or eliminate because it was unnecessary when I got this space and the perspective. So low time margin. Also, I want to say this, vacations require recovery. Like people go away on vacation. They're like, I can't remember what we did. And I need a vacation from my vacation because again, the same operating system is running. You're trying to pack your schedule. We're going from here to there. We're doing a million things. We're rushing. We're either early. We feel FOMO. We're missing out. And there's no depth. There's no presence. You're not truly experiencing the moment. People are on their phones. You're busy. You're distracted. And then you get back from the trip and you're like, hold on, like, can I look at my pictures? Because I forgot what we did. And I want to say, like, I've been there. I've been in this place and I'm so grateful I don't live here anymore. High margin, there's white space, time on your calendar that is free. White space for deep work, for thinking, for just going for walks, for sitting and resting. We know that this is the space of creativity. This is the space of power. This is the space of strategic thinking. There's buffer when you go from one thing to the next. When you have time margin, there's a transitions from one thing to the next. There's buffer space, right? There's space that's curated and allocated for deep work, for specific things. Like you're intentional with your time. It's not like everything is just running together. You're trying to do deep work while you're trying to answer emails, while you're doing team calls, while you're trying to deal with your kids' stuff. Like everything is not blurring together. You have time and space set apart. Okay. There's time for rest. There's time for reflection. There's time for intentional rhythms, whatever that is for you. So I get to work out. I don't get to feel guilty that I'm trying to cram my workout. And there's a time and a space dedicated to honoring the temple, which is the body, right? There's a time and a space to be with the Lord. There's a time and a space to be with my family. And there's margin around that. I think this is so important because stillness, when we are called and we're commanded to be still and know that I'm God. So being able to be with the moments, be with the experience, be present, be still. It's something that we have to cultivate. And stillness requires margin. I know so many people that reach out and they're like, I've been trying to pray. I've asked God. He's not giving me answers. And I'm like, because you're rushing in and you're rushing out. And you're running in to get a question. And then when you don't get it fast enough and you don't get it the way you want, you run out frustrated and irritated that you didn't get what you wanted. But you can't run any relationship like that. The insight, the gold often comes after you spend time with someone. You're in conversation with someone. And sometimes that place is like, it takes minutes. Sometimes it takes days. And you have to be patient in the process. So stillness requires margin. Clarity requires margin. Okay. Mark 6:31, Jesus said, come away by yourselves to a quiet place and rest a while. Jesus built rest into his mission. He often always slipped away and went to spend time in solitude, went to spend time in prayer, went to spend time with the Father. Ecclesiastes 3 tells us there is a time for everything. So we're not trying to cram everything into time, but there is a time and a place for everything. This is what it means to operate from a place of clarity, alignment, and abundance versus a place of confusion, misalignment, and scarcity or lack or survival. Okay. Margin is what allows you to discern what season you're in so that you know how to allocate, how to steward your time, what you get to say yes to and no to. The next thing I want to talk about is energy margin. Okay, this is huge. Energy is everything. It is your life force. Today I was writing, I'm like, if there is life in it, if it is life giving, if I'm energized by it, if it makes me feel like more of myself, it amplifies, it multiplies me. God is in it, because he is a life giver. He's the giver of life. He breathes life into things. If I'm going into things and they just suck the life out of me, I feel energetically drained. That's the life force being drained out of you. Either it's the wrong thing or you're over giving, you're over pouring, you're overextending. It could be too much exercise, too much work, too much giving, right? And we do this, like we want to serve everyone. So without energy, like time means nothing. You can have all the time in the world, but you don't have energy, you won't do anything with it. You won't enjoy it. Okay. So low margin, chronic fatigue, waking up tired. I wake up tired. I'm chronically fatigued. I'm overstimulated. I'm on high alert, right? I'm in this like chronic heightened state of alert where I'm triggered. I'm reactive. I'm jumpy. My sleep is poor. You have poor sleep. You're waking up often during the night. You're having trouble falling asleep. You're emotionally reactive. Why? Because you're not sleeping. You're hypervigilant. Your nervous system is on high alert. And you're probably living off caffeine or some kind of like energy drinks or whatever. You're feeling the inflammation in your body. Your joints are sore. You're gaining weight and you're just not recovering. Your stamina, your endurance, your life force isn't there. Sometimes this is like the things that used to be so life-giving for you are draining for you. If we have an energy deficit, we need to pay attention because eventually it will manifest as dis-ease. Remember that the body is created to be in homeostasis or ease. That is our natural state. Ease is our natural state. Peace is supposed to be our baseline. Rested so that we can work, that we can do the right work, commit our work to the Lord, and it can be fruitful. Ease so that our body can heal while we're resting, while we're sleeping. It can become stronger. We can build muscle. We can build tissue. We can build new cells that are healthy, not diseased. Because if your energy, like we said, that's energy is everything. Every cell in your body is carrying light energy. And if the less light we have, the less light. Hey, I want to let you know about a live masterclass I'm hosting soon called Reclaiming the Territory of Your Marriage. I'm going to be sharing the 3 keys to help you rebuild connection with your spouse, restore trust, and lead with greater certainty at home. So click on the link. Get registered. This is an exclusive event for a limited time. It is powerful and you do not want to miss it. You're going to walk away with actionable steps and clear strategies that you can apply this week. Click on the link, get registered, and I'll see you on the other side. Of course, we have the sicker the cells become. And eventually this manifests as autoimmune disease, cancers, tumors, all kinds of ailments in the body. High margin energy. Okay. When we're talking about energy, do I have high margin, high vitality, high life force? Well, there's vitality, there's energia, right? There's emotional regulation. We wake up rested. We can manage our emotions a lot easier. We're not flying off the handle. We're not as triggered. We can experience joy. We feel strong in our bodies, right? We're not feeling exhausted and weak. We're not living off caffeine. We can have a coffee. I'm having a coffee now, but we're drinking water, we're eating healthy foods. There's enthusiasm for our life. That's the passion. So many people reach out to me and they're like, I've lost the passion. I've lost the joy. Everything is like so life sucking. Again, it could be that you are doing the wrong things. You're pouring into the wrong cups, right? You're misaligned. So much of energy fatigue. Low margin energy is actually a misplacement of our energy. And often, sometimes it's the same or sometimes it's combined with too much, doing too much of the thing. Too much of a good thing is still too much, right? Too much food will suck the energy out of you. Like if we eat too much, we actually become more lethargic instead of more energized. So we can eat a great meal, but we have to know the right amount. And this is what I'm talking about. So Isaiah 40:31 says, those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. I love that because God does not promise us, unlimited hustle, like those who rush to do everything, those who cram their schedule full. He promises renewed strength when we partner with him, when we walk with him, when we commune with him, when we wait upon the Lord, right? John 10:10, I always come back to that verse. It says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I have come that you may have life and that you might have it abundantly. Life force, vitality, energia, right? That you might have it abundantly. That's why this is not about merely existing. I said a low margin life is when we're just existing. We're getting through another day. I'm getting through another day. You ask people, how are you doing? And they're like, well, I'm getting through another day. You're surviving. You're not created to survive. You're created to thrive. God is a God of multiplication. That was the first commandment: multiply, prosper, fill the earth, but not to the point that you're dying and exhausted and doing it from striving and stressing and trying to do everything in your own strength. Do it using my system, my formula, right? My principles, kingdom principles, which are life-giving, multiplying, but we have to give him containers to fill. It's like the jars of oil, right? We've got to bring something to the Lord and say, here, I'm giving you this so that he can fill it, so that he can multiply. Okay, let's talk about a couple more. Relational margin. Relationships. Do you have high margin relationships, or do you have low margin existence inside of your relationships? I talk about relationships so much because relationships, like at the end of the day, this is what people want. It doesn't matter if they had tons of time or little time. They wish they would have spent more time, more presence with the people they love, that they would have healed the stuff that they were resentful about, the divisions, that they would have loved their people more, held less grudges, right? Low margin marriages and relationships, are filled with just logistical conversations. Conversations is just logistics. What are we doing? Where do we need to be? What's the next problem we need to solve? Connection becomes another thing on the checklist. It's like, okay, fine, let's go for the date night. Okay, fine, let's have a family meal. Everybody sit down. Like, it's forced. In a low margin relationship, connection it's surface level. It's forced. We don't give ourselves the space to get to understand each other, to ask each other real questions that you can't ask in passing. They require presence. They require time, space, being there with your heart, like giving your heart, right? Being there soul to soul, mind to mind, intellectually, spiritually connected. So when conversations become logistics, connection becomes another item on the checklist. Okay, I did that. Intimacy starts to disappear. Like we just don't have the heart, the desire for each other. Why? Because we're exhausted, because we're running, we're at max capacity. We don't have anything to give emotionally. You're physically together, but emotionally, there's emptiness, there's disconnection, there's no passion, there's no intimacy. And I want to say this, that spiritually, you're probably strangers. Because when you have low margin relationships, you're not connecting emotionally. You're certainly not connecting spiritually, spirit to spirit. And spiritual connection, spiritual intimacy is richness. It is such wealth. It'll open doors for you that you could never open on your own. It will pour favor on your life like you've never seen before. It'll transform the way you guys talk to each other, the way you work together, what God brings into your life. Because this is the power of unity, right? When God's at the center and we come together with Christ as the cornerstone, that's like the unification is the way of multiplication. So how do we start to shift into high margin? What does high margin look like? We can be here for each other. We take the time, the space to connect heart to heart, spirit to spirit, intellectually, not just about problems, kids, logistics, but we're breathing life into our marriage. We have long walks. I talk about the walks that Mark and I do all the time. Like one of the first things we did when I came home from Greece actually was, okay, let's go for our walk. Let's recalibrate. Let's sync back up and, do our 3 mile walk together. We went and had a nice long, slow dinner and just talked and had a chance to connect spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And it gives you space to laugh together, to listen to each other, to enjoy each other, to have curiosity. Here's the thing, a lot of people want, everyone wants a high margin relationship. Who doesn't want intimacy, connection, laughter? But if you're building a life where there is no margin, you cannot have depth and richness in your relationship, in your marriage. It's impossible. You're skimming the surface all the time. So as I'm talking to you guys about creating a life and curating a life and building a life where there is higher margin, it takes intentionality. I'm going to say that again. You're creating it, you're curating it. You have to create the environment in which margin lives, exists, and you have to build it, which means you need to protect the time. You need to protect the space. You need to protect the relationship. You need to protect your energy. And that means it's going to require you say no to some things, right? Commitments that have outrun their course, people, dinners, invitations, more work projects, sometimes money, whatever it is. So I want to finish with a couple more here. We talked about energy. I want to talk about work for a second, work margin, because I think that this is a space. I hear this all the time, and I actually heard it yesterday on a call. Someone said again, well, if I'm going to make 7 figures as our personal income, I'm going to need to grind, work these crazy hours. Like it's going to require all of me to show up to be able to do that. Now, that in itself, when he said that, we didn't unpack that on that call, but I'm circling back to it because we were dealing with something else. But that in itself is the program that's running, that's creating a low margin life. In order to produce what he believes is a high lifestyle, production or provision, he's creating a low margin life. That is not a kingdom mindset. That is not the ways of heaven. That is not how God works. Okay. Is there a way where you can have a highly profitable life, high margin, and also have a highly profitable income? Of course, that's true. Of course that is. So what does that reality look like? What does that system look like? What do we get to build there? This goes back to what I said in the last episode where I was talking about there are people who are building a business and structures and products and services that are requiring all of their time, all of their energy, all of their heart, their soul, all of them in order to try to go create a high margin life. You can't do that. It actually never will happen. You'll create all this only to realize you have a low margin life. What you need to do is to determine what is the high margin life that I'm going to have, a marriage, health that's going to have overflow, space in it, right? Where I'm actually have abundance, which is our natural state. And let me create structure, systems, businesses, products, services, whatever it is, to, rhythms to support that. And by the way, you might be thinking like, Christine, this sounds awesome. How do I even do that? You book a call with me. You start working with me. This is exactly the work we do when we coach is we start to restructure the way that you work and the way that you operate. We have to rewire your operating systems and align them to the operating systems of heaven. And we have to start to incorporate them into your daily life. So let's talk about work margin. Low margin is you're firefighting all the time. You're in decision fatigue. Every problem comes to you. You're probably the bottleneck for a lot of things. And your identity is most likely wrapped up in either your position, your role, your company, what you guys do, who you serve. It's like, I am what I do. I am my business. And this is why so many times when I work with founders, CEOs, business owners, when there's a business shift or economical shift, or for whatever reason, you're shutting one business down, starting another, there's an identity crisis with that. Because in a low margin life, you've built your entire life and identity around the business, which is what we were just talking about, right? So a low margin existence is like the business is my life, right? If I don't show up, this thing dies. If I don't make the decisions, no one else can make decisions. If I don't deal with every problem, like no one will find solutions. And it doesn't matter. I've worked with leaders and founders that have 2 employees and thousands of employees that are running 7-figure companies and almost nearly 10-figure companies, 9-figure companies. So at the end of the day, the same problems exist. All you're doing is adding zeros and adding numbers to it. Okay. High margin work is work that is life giving. Low margin work, you're in the wrong seat. You're probably still trying to control or have your hands in way too many things. You're not doing the work that energizes you. You're not working on your highest leverage activities as a founder, as a business owner, as a CEO, as wherever you are. You're trying to do all the things and actually you're getting in the way, right? And so what this creates is like frustration with your team's frustrated with you, things are not moving forward, and you feel like you can't step away. But when you have a high margin work life, a business, you're aligned. You've built great support and structure around you. You've empowered people around you. You're in your lane doing the work that only you can do, that you're gifted to do, that you're called to do. It's highly fulfilling. It's energizing. You know it's the assignment for this season. You have time and space to mentor and develop the people around you, time and space for strategic thinking and strategic execution. And you are in that visionary seat instead of trying to be the operator in the trenches all the time. This reminds me of Exodus chapter 18, when Moses is trying to be the judge for all the people, right? He's sitting in a tent, and all day from morning till night, everyone's coming to him. In Exodus 18, Moses is sitting there. The people have all left Egypt. There's grumbling, there's disagreements, there's all this stuff, and people are trying to figure out how to settle disputes. So Moses is like, okay, I will sit in the tent and everybody will come to me and ask me the questions, and I will be the judge and I'll tell them what God says about it. Well, could you imagine just sitting there, having to wake up, run to your tent, sit down so that everybody can come to you for every answer, every solution? I love it when Jethro told Moses, what you are doing is not good, right? What you're doing is not good. Like, this is not sustainable. You're going to kill yourself, and these people are not going to be able to flourish this way. What you need to do is delegate. And so Jethro is now telling Moses, discipling Moses, mentoring him into like splitting the groups into tribes and assigning leader and putting systems in place. This is creating margin, right? So even Moses needed delegation. He needed to align himself. Okay, I want to finish with this, that I absolutely believe that we can have margin in our finances. We can have profitable businesses. We didn't talk about financial margin, but you can create a life and a business where there is high profitability, high margin, there's spaciousness for yourself. There's more than enough room for you to have the energy, to have the relationships, to have the health. I mean, God is a God of overflow, right? This is the kingdom principle. The kingdom is on overflow, not depletion. Think about God's pattern. There's 6 days of work, there's a full day of rest. Everything is done, and everything that God created was designed to multiply. Not that it needed him to keep multiplying, right? The seeds, the flowers, the plants, the birds, the animals, everything that he created in such a way so that he rested, and then everything had the seed in it to multiply, to expand. Think about that for a minute, right? It didn't require him to babysit it, keep watching it, make sure it wasn't going to die. Like, plants are created to thrive, multiply. Seeds, one apple seed, how many orchards are in there? You put 2 animals together, how many herds can you have? This is the kingdom of God. And when you look at this, even when you look at Jesus withdrawing regularly, like, he's on this earth, he's got a mission, he's got to heal people, he's got to spread the word of God. He's got the biggest job in all of mankind. And he still takes the first fruit of his morning to go into solitude with the Lord, to go into the place of the secret place, to pray, to be with the Father. And he says, apart from the Father, I do nothing. Yes, he had a ton of work to do. Yes, his mission was bigger than we'll ever be called to do in our lifetime. And he still knew that I need the margin to be spiritually. I need spiritual margin. This type of works requires immense spiritual margin. Okay. The last one I love, we love the story of the baskets, right? When Jesus feeds the 5,000, he didn't just do it once, he did it multiple times. And he says, like, what do we have? What can you bring that feels like not enough? Let me multiply it. The disciples didn't have to figure out how to feed the 5,000. They just needed to bring what they did have, even though it didn't feel like enough, and say, Lord, I'm going to bring you what I do have and trust that you will work in the space of what I give you in the container. You know, this is the widow's oil. Start pouring from it what it seems like you don't have, and it multiplies as she pours, but she has to bring the container. So my question to you is this, first of all, I want to say as we wrap is that God's economy consistently includes more than enough. That is his operating system. He doesn't just meet the immediate need, he does super abundantly more than we could ever ask, dream, or imagine. He creates and operates from our place of rest. He works in the place of generosity. He works in the place of renewal. This is the kingdom. Okay, it's not lack, it's not running behind, it's not never feeling good enough, never doing enough. I'm challenging you guys today to really ask yourself, have I been living a high margin life? Am I living the fruit of the kingdom? Is my life evidence that I'm living according to the kingdom, or is my life a reflection and evidence that I'm living according to the low margin existence that is the programming of the world? Okay. God wants to multiply everything good in your lives, but you have to give him room in order to do that. So you guys, thank you so much for being here. I hope that this episode blessed you. And I want to say that for those of you that are really getting a lot of pings right now and you're saying, I need to do something different. I am not living a high margin life. I want to say yes to greater depth, greater fulfillment, more vitality, more of the time to focus on what matters. I want to highly encourage you that if you are a founder, executive, or business owner, you know that you are the greatest asset to your family and your business, and you know that you need the support and structure around you right now to make the second half even better than the first half. Click on the link, book a call. Let's see if working together in the advisory is the right next step. And for the rest of you, keep tuning in, grab my book, click on the link, buy the book, listen to the show, share this message with other people. I hope that it blesses you, and I hope that it will convict you today to make some decisions in your life in a powerful way.